What is urban farming? Urban farming and community gardens are community-managed open spaces. At their most basic level, they are the communal growing of plants in city areas based on principles of shared leadership, transparent decision-making, and collective accountability. The most common type of community garden allows individuals to reserve a plot for themselves where they can grow the crop of their choosing with the choice of shared tools, soil, and water. Other community gardens take the shape of a farm for the collective benefit of its users and neighbors, even including education and community building as part of its foundation. Some of the first modern versions of urban agriculture in the United States were part of the Victory Garden movement prompted by the United States government. In the World War II era, citizens in the rural, suburban, and urban areas were encouraged to grow food to support their own health, save on grocery costs, and increase individual and community well-being through the act of gardening and beautification. The Dolan Community Garden holds the title of the oldest community garden in the Twin Cities. It was started as a victory garden in the Longfellow neighborhood in Minneapolis in 1943, where it was converted from a marsh and is now home to 190 plots and 250 gardeners. As time has passed and our world has evolved, so has urban agriculture in the Twin Cities. Today, collectives like Appetite for Change in North Minneapolis and Urban Roots on St. Paul's East Side focus on youth, community empowerment, and health through local food production. At the same time, hundreds of smaller community gardens draw neighbors together over the joy of the land. Tucked into the East Phillips neighborhood of Minneapolis, Tamales y Bicicletas urban farm is cultivating a healthy, sustainable, and culturally relevant food system through community knowledge and action, centering BIPOC and immigrant communities in their work. Jose Luis Villaseñor is the founder of Tamales y Bicicletas.
My name is Jose Luis Villaseñor. I'm the founder of Tamales y Bicicletas. Tamales is really kind of looking at our agricultural system that is a contributor to a lot of the climate chaos that we're experiencing. But also tamales is a 6,000-year-old indigenous dish. It's a dish that existed prior to first contact with Spaniards. The corn gives us our traditional dishes. And so that's the conversation we started with around food. Where did the tamal come from? What is it made out of? Corn? What's the history and our relationship to corn as Mexicanos? And then we moved from there. And then the transportation, or bicicletas, was kind of just a way to kind of challenge a lot of the very biculture in Minneapolis that was really kind of not embracing the diversity of our city at the time. This is 15 some plus years ago. So it was an opportunity for us to kind of interject into that area of biking, of being a place that we understand that biking helps our mental health, our physical health, and also as a way to kind of reduce our environmental footprint. Through urban farming, we're taking an opportunity of an empty lot that sat empty for many years to now start growing with our neighbors locally, and organic products too. We're working to work with our BIPOC families, our youth, our elders, to kind of reduce our environmental impact on how we grow our food and localize it. And also use farming or urban farming as an opportunity for our communities that are traumatized by a broken immigration system, low income, the lack of housing or the housing rights, and just injustice, historical impacts that we have experienced and absorbed into our bodies. I remember my parents couldn't afford childcare, and they worked at a restaurant, and next to the restaurant was a tortilla factory. And I remember having to nap there after school on top of sacks of cornmeal and falling asleep until the sound of tortillas and chips being processed, and then waking up when my parents were off shift to go home. And so I always feel like my journey around food began with food inequity. And so watching my parents really work in a restaurant industry that was really exploitive to them, that almost took their lives based on all the injuries they experienced. And then also knowing my parents' agricultural history and that they lived really closely with the land. My father built with his friends an adobe home. My mom gave birth to all three of my brothers and sisters at home. So they were very land-based, but were forced out of the country for economic reasons. They could no longer sustain economically in that country, so they would have to come to the United States. And so as I became older, I kind of started using those experiences to say, this was my negative journey about growing up in the United States as being considered less of because of being Mexican or first generation Mexican. And then I started to find all of the rich history my parents were in some levels told to ignore and not share with us. And that was their knowledge of being able to walk through a forest or a weeded area and identify medicine, or to be able to grow seed, grow food, what seasons, when to grow food, when to water. It's just things that they didn't really teach me, and I watched them do it. And I learned so much from that. And as I became older, I just started to tap that more. As I became aware of my culture, I strengthened my identity, learned more about creating community, I went back home, literally into my memories of growing up with my parents and what they were teaching me indirectly about food, about justice, about community, and about really believing who you are and not allowing people to tell you anything different. I really believe that urban farming gives us an opportunity to get our hands in the soil, to deal with those traumatic situations, but also collectively talk about what we need in our communities. And those are housing rights, those are food justice, those are environmental justice. Food, agriculture may be a touching point and where we can all come together and talk about these really tough issues that are affecting the family. You know, I always say that we grow food last and we build cultural resistance and community empowerment first. And so this space that you're here today at is, is our urban farm, but it's also a place where people gather to celebrate each other. It's a place to talk about conversations around safety concerns community members are having. It's a place to talk about, again, food, where we get access to. And it's also a place to just get to know each other, right? So I think building community is what we do first, and what we do last is grow food together. And I think if anything, what I've witnessed, there'll be times where people will come out to weed or water, but really they're really just here to talk and chat. Like Jose Luis will be there at the time, or La Señora Maria will be here at this time. I think sometimes we miss those opportunities to build relationships, to build family, and that's what this place is doing. Within the environmental justice movement, within the urban ag movement, or food justice movement, I think sometimes we're really quick to complicate stuff, and that just keeps people at arm's length. If you take the complication out of it, and you bring people in at the level they're at, around soil, dirt, bugs that you're gonna have to deal with that are around your plants, or watering, whatever it is. I think what the long game will do and engaging people is meeting people where they're at in their journey of reclaiming their diet, reclaiming their understanding of the food they consume, learning the knowledge about what is nutritious and what is not. If you are growing, herb plants on your windowsill to involve in a conventional farm or an urban farm, you're part of the jardín urbano movement. You're part of the movement. And so I think for us, it's definitely important for people to realize that, and then to come learn with us around, how do you upkeep a farm? When do you plant seedlings? And again, building relationships. A lot of people that are here today volunteering, I met them here, and now they're part of the Tamales y Bicicletas family. And that only happened, what I believe is that how you build community is through sweating and eating with each other. And that's what happens here. We sweat with each other to build this greenhouse or to get the fields ready. And then during harvest time, then we're going to eat together. And so those are the ways, I would argue, the catalysts that really build the work we're trying to do in community.
Urban farms have been shown to improve air quality, soil carbon storage, and decrease erosion. Gardening gets people active and can provide a sense of self-worth and purpose. It can increase access to culturally relevant foods and create communities that engage with each other over the food and the earth. And, of course, it saves on grocery costs too. Despite all these benefits, there are barriers to success in urban farming. Soil contamination, lack of long-term access to land and capital, and difficulties navigating leasing and contracting systems for non-English speakers are just some of the struggles on the road to food sovereignty. Fortunately, you can support these endeavors. Just joining a community garden is support enough. In the description, there will be links to community farms local to the Twin Cities. Many of these are managed by the Minneapolis Parks and Recreation Board, and they are free to have a plot at. If you'd like to do more, here are some ways you can get involved. Volunteer as a community garden lead at your local garden. Contact your Park and Recreations Board Community Garden Coordinator if you think a public park would benefit from a community garden. Get involved in policy making. Urban planning and zoning can include a designated urban agriculture space in the city of Minneapolis. These are specifically set aside for community gardening. Find out if one of these exists in your neighborhood, or talk to your city council member about how you can advocate for one. Voice support for creating tax incentives for urban agriculturalists, making publicly owned land available for farming, and appropriating funds to the Minnesota Department of Agriculture to implement 2015's legislation, Special Session, Chapter 4, Article 2, Section 85, are advances we can support to make food production more local and community-based. Together, we can make a difference within our communities. One of these differences may just grow its roots in a local community garden.